Welcome back, everyone. Dr. Michael Klaper is a graduate of the University of Illinois College of Medicine in Chicago and has practiced acute medical care in Hawaii, Canada, California, Florida, and New Zealand. To improve the health of his patients as well as his own, and to minimize suffering of sentient beings, Dr. Klaper adopted a plant-based diet in 1981. A longtime radio host and pilot, Dr. Klaper has served as nutrition advisor to NASA's programs for space colonists on the Moon and Mars, and on the nutrition task force of the American Medical Students Association. He has authored numerous articles on plant-based nutrition and is authoring a book on using plant-based medicine to arrest and reverse disease. Dr. Klaper has practiced nutritionally based medicine at True North Health Center in Santa Rosa, California for the last 8 years, and his talent for presenting complex medical topics in a simple, enjoyable format has made him a sought-after speaker at health conferences worldwide. One personal note I'd like to add is that Dr. Klaper is one of the most compassionate doctors and has a special area and focus now on educating medical students. And so if there are any medical students that you know of, please have them contact him through his website. It is my honor to present to you Dr. Michael Klaper.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. Thank you for coming. And hopefully this talk about arteries will be a little less eventful than the last one. I'm told I was in my cabin working on finishing touches on this talk. And apparently Dr. Khan and the crew had a bit of excitement here. I want to talk to you about exactly what happened there and give you some insight so you don't wind up on the other end of Dr. Khan's administrations. I graduated from the University of Illinois College of Medicine in Chicago in 1972, and this is what I looked like on graduation day, and as you can see, I have not changed a bit. When I graduated, I was a very well-schooled young graduate. I'd gone to the University of Illinois, one of the best medical schools in the country. There are things I knew, because I had studied Robert's pathology and Schwartz's textbook of surgery and Harrison's textbook of internal medicine. I knew that atherosclerosis, that plaquing up of the arteries, is a relentlessly progressive disease. We don't know what causes it, but once it's started, nothing stops it. High blood pressure pills, no question, they will be on these pills the rest of their lives. This is lifetime medication. Nobody gets off hypertensive medication. Diabetes, the mantra was once on insulin, always on insulin. You're diabetic, man. You're end of the road for you. That never goes away. Autoimmune diseases, the body's attacking itself. We don't know why, but it's having a bad day and decided to attack its own kidneys and its own thyroid. And an etiology unknown, so don't bother your pretty little head thinking about it, but the smart guys in the lab at Harvard and NIH are working day and night to figure it out. When they get the answer, they'll let you know. Meanwhile, prescribe that prednisone. And nutrition, boring stuff. And if you're a young medical student, you want to be up in that ER, suturing lacerations and fixing broken arms and delivering babies. Nutrition, boring stuff. Send them to the dietitian. They'll give them a 2,000 calorie diet. Don't bother me. I'm up in the OR doing real medicine. And ironically, for discarding the importance of the most important science of all, nutrition. They are going to condemn themselves to the rest of their careers being up in the OR or in the catheterization lab or in the GI endoscopy suite at 3 in the morning, dealing with the hemorrhages and the infections and the infarctions and the amputations from what their patients are eating. These are all dietary-induced diseases. What have I learned in 46 years of medical care? None of these statements are true. Every one of them. And I spent the last 46 years dealing not with the smallpox, bubonic plague, and leprosy that I was trained to teach, trained to treat. I've spent the last 46 years treating Ken and his ilk. And with this panoply of diseases, he's obese by 60 pounds, he's on 2 blood pressure meds, he's on diabetes meds, he's on cholesterol meds, arteries are all clogged up, and yet again, you run into two words, etiology unknown. We don't know what causes these diseases, but poor old Ken, just the luck of the draw, and picked some bad genes from his parents. One of the most hopeless talk is about hope. One of the hopeful trends that I see and that I'm trying to fan to the greatest extent possible is that the etiology is not unknown. We know very well what is causing these diseases, and they are eminently reversible diseases, unlike the diabetes educators who teach their patients to be good diabetics, and you're never going to get rid of this disease, so you just take your insulin and do what your doctor tells you. Nonsense. Type 2 diabetes is an eminently reversible disease, as is hypertension, as is atherosclerosis, as is colitis, as is inflammatory arthritis. These diseases, fearsome. What could possibly be the cause? Do we have to understand everything about Ken's DNA and his genetics to understand? No. You can understand the cause of this with one question. What'd you eat yesterday, Ken? The answer to why he's overweight, hypertensive, diabetic, clogged up, and inflamed is obvious. If you just take a dietary history, you understand what's really going on. Now, my medical colleagues, bless them, at NIH and in the labs at Harvard, can identify a genetic mismatch on gene A21 on chromosome 14. Boy, they can identify that in their sleep. I've never seen one, you'll never see one, but they can see that. But the thought that what Ken is eating may be playing some role in the clogged arteries and obesity and high blood pressure and diabetes, this seems to be beyond my colleagues' comprehension. This is a concept too abstruse and convoluted for them to dare to put in plain English, let alone scientific jargon. So let's talk a bit about this condition, because I want to free you from a tyranny that you may be under, that most people are when they're dealing with the health of their arteries. We're born with healthy, wide open arteries. Plaque begins to form in our teens, 20s, and 30s, and by our 40s, 50s, 60s, becomes very obstructive. And the surgeons go in and they try to remove a little piece in this artery and stent a blockage in that artery, but it's a total body disease. If you've got it in one artery, you've got it everywhere. If you have a little chest pain from angina, it's in your coronary arteries, it's in your cerebral arteries, it's in your renal arteries, it's in your femoral arteries. It's a total body disease. And as we so recently learned, every 30 seconds, it's relentless. Something bad goes on in those arteries, and one American grabs their chest and every other one of them dies. And if you do the math, there's 2,000 people every 24 hours. It's a 9/11 disaster every 24 hours. And it affects arteries all over the body, including up in the brain. It's the leading cause of dementia. It's present in everybody, from their teens on. And being a marathon runner will not burn this crud out of your arteries. Those arteries are inflamed, and those arteries, that plaque is building up, and you can run from here to the moon, and it is not going to melt these plaques away. As Jim Fix, the editor of Runner's World, found out as he dropped it on a run. And when they do ultrasound scans in the marathon runners who are eating the American diet, their arteries are as plaqued up as anybody who's not a runner. That is not the salvation. And as Dr. Esselstyn and many others are trying to tell us, these oils are not heart healthy. They injure the artery walls, they make them stiff, they make them inflame. All the oils, including the vaunted olive oil. So you wind up where Lou Cullen, head of cardiovascular medicine at Pittsburgh, had to make the pronouncement that all males 65 years older and all females 70 years of age or older who have been exposed to the traditional Western diet have cardiovascular disease. They should be treated as such. You don't have to do tests, they assume it. So, what do? You go to your cardiologist, and you have concerns about your arteries and your health. And so, you open yourself up to investigations, and you immediately run into some questions that have numerical answers. What's the cardiologist going to ask you? How high is your cholesterol? What's your ratio of total cholesterol to HDL? What is your cholesterol particle size? And these have numerical answers. And if the numbers are higher than a given limit that the cardiologist has read about that day or that week, if your HDL is below, if your LDL is too high, if your particle size is too small, whatever it is, a scowl comes across their face, and out comes a prescription tab. Why? Because sitting on that cardiologist's shoulder is his malpractice lawyer screaming into his ear, if this person has a heart attack or a stroke with these cholesterol numbers and you don't have them on statins, that is below standard of care, you are going to get sued by their family for everything you've got. So out comes this prescription pad, you must take these statins for to prevent that heart attack. And done, and that's what you run into. This is what I call the tyranny of the numbers. Doesn't matter who you are, what you are, your LDL is above 100, you're walking out of there with a prescription for Lipitor. You damn well better take it, because he will be pissed off at the next exam if you haven't taken your statins. How many of you guys, what's your ratio, what's part of the size? All these questions miss the point. Question is not, how high is your cholesterol? You'll see why in a minute. The question really is, if you're a biologist, not a fear-filled technician like the cardiologists have become, the real question is, how healthy are your arteries? What's really going on in those artery walls? Is a biological organ, are they healthy or not? You can tell when skin isn't healthy, you can tell when lungs aren't healthy. Are your arteries healthy or not? That should be the cardiologist's question. Dermatologist takes care of skin, pulmonologist takes care of lungs, the cardiologist takes care of an artery healer and a heart healer. Why is this important to the cardiologist? Because the cardiologist should, just like every other specialist, rheumatologist, dermatologist, internist, all of them, needs to understand that when you eat a plant-strong meal like we have been served here every day, and lots of fresh vegetables, especially nice fresh salad, if I were to sneak up on you an hour later with a needle and a syringe in my hand, and when you weren't looking, draw a tube of blood, and let it sit in the tube, it would separate out into two parts. And the liquid part of the blood, the serum, would rise up to the top. It's crystal clear yellow. This is what your blood should look like. But you eat one of Ken's favorite meals and have a burger and fries and chicken and the pizza and the olive oil on the salad. And an hour later, your blood looks like this. This fatty appearance is called lipemia. It means fat in the blood. Not everybody shows it this optically densely, but everybody has a wave of fat that goes through your bloodstream after a fatty meal, and it stays fatty for at least 4 hours. They gave someone a fatty meal here, drew blood every hour, and for 6 hours, took those 6 blood tubes, put them one after another into a spectrophotometer to see how milky the blood is looking, and you can see it getting fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter. It takes about 5 hours to begin to clear it out of it. Well, look how most Americans eat. They start their day off with something fatty. Their blood's fatty all morning, clogging up their arteries, making them obese, upsetting their hormone levels, increasing the risk for breast cancer, prostate cancer. It takes till noontime to clear this out of the blood, just in time for lunch. People send another wave of fat to their bloodstream. It takes the liver till about 6 in the evening to clear it out of the bloodstream, just in time to visit the colonel and send another wave of fat to the bloodstream. And it takes the liver about till 10 o'clock at night to begin to clear this out of the bloodstream. And on the way back to the bedroom, people send another wave of fat to the bloodstream. And I just eat chicken, I just eat salmon. Don't kid yourself. These are fatty, fatty animals. These chickens and turkeys are raised to put on as much fat as possible into their flesh. And this last time you saw someone make chicken soup, you know it floats up to the top. Stop kidding yourself. The chicken is somehow lean protein, or lean meat. It's not lean anything. It's the fattest of all the flesh foods. So the reality is that most Westerners are keeping their blood fatty all day. We covered this earlier in the week. Why am I bothering to mention this? Because there's more than just fat in there's blood. And those of you who have not fully jumped onto a whole food plant-based diet, these next slides and images are meant to help you make that jump to a whole food plant-based diet. Welcome to Camp Stop Kidding Yourself. If you are eating animal flesh and dairy products and restaurant foods that have oil and sugar, salt in them, you are really doing some damage on a molecular level to your tissues. After a meal, and this is symbolic for any, whether it's chicken teriyaki at the Chinese restaurant, or steak at the Outback, or a burger, pizza with sausage, whatever it is. You do this to your bloodstream. And in your blood, indeed, there is fat, no question. That stiffens your arteries, makes your blood thicker, and slows down oxygen delivery into your tissues, causes hypoxia up in brain and other tissues. The fat clings to your abdomen, where it makes you obese, sending out inflammatory molecules, sending out estrogens that increase risk of cancers. The saturated fat increases inflammatory reactions in the body. All the salt that's hidden in this food makes you retain water. It stiffens your arteries, turns on genes that set you up for autoimmune disease. All the sugars and the soft drinks and the starchy fries and the white bread turns into advanced glycation end products that damage protein throughout your body. This is just from junk fats and sugars and salt, which can come out of vegan junk foods. And if you're living on energy bars and caffeine drinks and granola cereals, you're just not going to be healthy because you're keeping all of this in the bloodstream. But if you choose to eat meat on a regular basis, and I'm not talking about, oh, what about a can of sardines once a month? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a Western meat-based diet where a meal is not complete unless there's a piece of animal muscle in the middle of the plate. Hey, where's my protein, man? Where's my chicken? Where's my fish? That kind of meal. Okay, the standard Western diet. You are choosing to keep a steady stream in your bloodstream of oxidized muscle protein. Everybody cooks the meat, and so it's going to produce a bunch of free radicals, reactive oxygen species. Animal flesh has this new 5-GC sialic acid, sets off inflammation throughout the body. The bacteria that coat the meat that's inevitably present turns into this endotoxin stuff that damages the arteries, makes your gut leaky. TMAO from the carnitine that's in the meat summons up bacteria that make this stuff that drives cholesterol into your artery walls. Cooking animal muscle creates carcinogenic hydrocarbons and polycyclic amines. More advanced glycation end products just from cooking the meat. These animals are fed grains that are sprayed with pesticides and herbicides that all concentrates in the animal's muscle. The water they drink has lead and arsenic and mercury that winds up in the fish's muscle, in the animal's muscle. And these animals are given hormones and antibiotics to make them grow faster, and that winds up in the animal's muscle. And so you say, well, I just eat chicken, but yes, I have meat every day. I gotta have my protein, gotta have. Then you are choosing to keep your blood chemistry filled with these molecules. And especially the ones that are solely from meat. This is what separates the plant eaters from the meat eaters. It's computer language is between 1 and 0. Man. You either eat this, you have this stuff in your bloodstream, or you don't. And the vegans, we can talk all about vegan philosophy, etc., but they don't have this stuff in their bloodstream. They are biochemically different people with a much lower risk of the diseases these molecules spawn as they run through all your tissues. And this is the issue that Dr. Colin Campbell is trying to communicate to us, is the entire food stream. If you're eating the burgers and pieces of chicken and the Chinese stuff, all that stuff, the entire food stream, the stream of this flowing through your teeth, the entire food stream is toxic. And just to try and reductionistically to tease out, well, maybe it's the carbs, or maybe it's the saturated fats, maybe it's he said, you're missing the point. The whole food stream is toxic. And that's what our food has degenerated into for the service of slathering salt, sugar, and fat on our tongues, so the food companies will make lots of money doing this. We accept, okay, we'll have this in our bloodstream day after day after day. The whole food stream is toxic, and it creates bodies, okay, like Kenneth. I missed the slide there. Okay. So, the real issue, how high is your cholesterol? Let's be biologists and get out from under these fucking numbers. The real issue is a molecule called oxidized cholesterol. To oxidize something is to rip electrons off of it. If you oxidize metal in your car bumper, it turns into rust. That's oxidation. Okay. Cholesterol is not an evil molecule. Our body uses it, we make it. But when it becomes oxidized, when it has electrons ripped off, it becomes a nasty molecule. So, the issue is that when Ken is eating his burger, he's just not eating raw beef muscle, old dairy cow, but he's not just eating pure animal muscle. He's drinking a Coke, he's eating fries. The Coke is full of sugar, it's full of phosphoric acid. The fries have been fried in vegetable oil. They've been fried at hot temperatures. They're full of free radicals. They're full of these bastardized omega-6 vegetable oil molecules. These are all oxidizing agents. And they're in the bloodstream at the same time Ken's cholesterol that his own liver made, but also the cholesterol from the poor animal that he ate. This is in his bloodstream. So when the cholesterol is in his bloodstream with all these oxidizing agents, the sugar and the phosphoric acid and the salt drinks and the fried food and cooked animal protein and his own cortisol and the polluted air, all these oxidizing agents are in his bloodstream at the same time, and they oxidize the cholesterol. So here's that bad old LDL cholesterol. This is the wall of his artery. Okay, it's this little piece down here. Okay. And here's that precious endothelial lining that Dr. Esselstyn talks about. And here's your bad old low-density lipoprotein. But add these free radicals from the crappy Western diet, and now you've got oxidized LDL. This is the bad additive. The oxidized LDL insinuates itself into the wall of the artery, and that sets off a hell of an inflammatory reaction. And that summons in these white blood cells, these macrophages, to gobble up these particles of oxidized LDL. In doing so, they make things worse. As they dismantle this, they set off cascades of free radicals, these terrorist atoms that rip electrons off everything. And this white blood cell becomes, like Dr. Russell said, the Darth Vader of cells just filled with free radicals. It's oxidizing and tearing up everything around it, the structural proteins, the cell membrane lipids of the muscle cells in the cell walls here. To have this foam cell deep in your artery wall is damaging. It is the driver of the disease. And it's all these molecules from that toxic brew, as they flow through the arteries, they start causing inflammation of the walls of the arteries. And that's the real issue. So hear this and you will know something that your cardiologist does not. The cardiologist who's got his eyes on, oh, what's your LDL part of the size? Oh, what's your total LDL level there? You need to be on that guy. I would take him and say, doctor, atherosclerotic plaques are not just globs of grease that stick to your artery walls because your LDL is too high. These are inflammatory lesions. These arteries have been injured. They've been inflamed. Cooked meat meal after cooked meat meal after French fry, after cigarette smoke, after alcoholic drink, after fight with the boss, after sleepless night, all high cortisol levels. This is the continued chemical onslaught against these poor artery linings here that injure them. And the body in response starts, almost as a plaster, as a glue, starts laying down these cholesterol plaques to keep the lining from disintegrating. But these are inflammatory lesions. Not what your LDL too high, let's poison your liver, so bring down that LDL. Doctor, you're missing the point. You've stopped being a biologist. You are now a fear-filled technician. These life-threatening plaques do not show up on a calcium score, as Dr. Kahn will tell you, but they do elevate your inflammatory markers like high-sensitivity CRP and myeloperoxidase. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. So, I hope you can start seeing now, because, well, how high is your LDL? Doesn't matter. The real issue is what's really happening in your artery walls. Are they becoming inflamed? If so, then what I want to know is your prostaglandin 2s going up? Is your high sensitivity CRP going up? As plaque starts building up, high sensitivity CRP starts building up. And then as your white blood cells start infiltrating the plaque to soften them and make them unstable, their enzymes like myeloperoxidase and phospholipase start softening the plaques and making them stable. So I want to know your myeloperoxidase level and your phospholipase level. These are the markers I want. I don't care about your particle size. Are these arteries healthy or not is the real issue. Because if they're not, then these caps will rupture and that sets off a plaque. I'm going to show you a surgical specimen of a clotted artery. If these kind of think about it, you can close your eyes here. But here's an artery cut cross section, and here's the cap that ruptured, and here's the clot that killed the fellow. You can visualize what is happening inside this man's artery. See, he has ruptured a plaque, and the clot is formed, and the heart muscle downstream is short of blood. And this is what a toxic food stream does to you. It blows you up. Dr. Ron Weiss gave this powerful presentation a couple days ago, and he showed you this patient of his, this lovely nurse practitioner woman. She had everything: obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, fibromyalgia, whatever. And the focus was how a whole food plant-based diet cured her. And yes, it certainly did do that, mostly from what wasn't in there. But what I took away from that is, my God, look how toxic that diet was, that it took a perfectly normal Homo sapien woman and blew her up into this lumbering mass of adiposity and inflammation that was, and oh, poor dear, and take this pill, my God, what in the world did that to a Homo sapiens frame? A diet filled with burgers and pizzas and processed meats and all of that. That's what will do it, okay? It's no big surprise. Doctor, I get headaches. When do you get headaches? Oh, every time I hit myself in the head with a hammer. Well, then you don't want to keep hitting yourself in the head with a hammer. My God, I eat pizzas and fried chicken and beer and chili dogs and burgers, and I got this big belly, and I got my own clogged arteries. Gee, Doc, what do you think the problem is? The answer was published in that prestigious medical journal called Duh. I'm always happy to tell him when he stops hitting himself in the head with a hammer, the headaches will stop, they go away, okay? And to my colleagues, and where I'm devoting the rest of my medical career is to what is on this slide, because it's past time that we scientists, earnestly seeking the truth that will help our patients, it doesn't matter what the truth is, that's what we owe our patients. It's time that myself and my colleagues have to stop pretending that what our patients are eating has no effect on these diseases they're bringing to us. That's because he's hiding. They're lying. They're pretending. Oh, it doesn't matter what you eat. There's never been any study showing it doesn't matter what you eat. Have you bothered to look, doctor, if you set your bottom down and fired up PubMed and typed in diet and inflammatory bowel disease, diet, inflammatory arthritis, your screen will fill up with studies that have been done. We'll admit that what our patients are eating, including what they eat as children, have everything to do with these diseases. By the way, if any of you are concerned, and ultimately you don't need to be, and I hope I remember to say this to you, but yeah, you can check your particle size and your LDL ratio going if you want, but the real issue is what's going on in your arteries. And I have no connection with these labs, but Cleveland Heart Lab, Boston Heart Lab, they have these inflammatory panels that your doctor can order. And you order oxidized LDL, find out how much oxidized cholesterol you got, and get these inflammatory markers. rather than just how high is your cholesterol. It's a dumb number. It doesn't tell us function. It doesn't tell us state of health of the arteries. Okay? They stop being biologists. And then if you want, have send you over to the local X-ray store there for a standard ultrasound scan of your arteries. And if your arteries are nice and clean as a whistle there and your inflammatory markers are low, well, you're fine. Okay? If plaque is building up, you see that. You see the ultrasonographer, you see it in the image there. That's all you really need to know. But the truth is, you don't even need to do this. If you've been eating the standard Western diet, assume you have this in your arteries. And if you adopt a whole food plant-based diet, by the arteries, it's melt away. And so this marker's high, it doesn't matter. Just get on with eating your kale and your carrots, and take a walk every day, and you'll be fine. It doesn't matter what you're starting at now. Assume you have artery disease, unless you've been raised as a vegan. Assume you do. That I wouldn't waste your time and money generating a whole bunch of numbers to worry about. And a whole bunch of pictures to fret over. Here's the inside of an artery, here's the intima layer, and if that's thickened, then that's a sign of early disease. You can get that if you want to worry about something else. But again, it's all academic stuff. Get on with the whole food plant-based diet, and your arteries will take care of themselves, your numbers will take care of themselves. Relentlessly progressive, not at all. And a note about statins. My most unfavorite drug, I never prescribe them. They are for Joe's six-pack, eating his burgers, eating his... Remember, all of the numbers that are generated by the drug companies for these studies, and all the risk factors associated with them. If your LDL is 100, and then you have a 3.5 chance of more getting... All those numbers are derived, they're all drawn from a population of millions of Joe six-pack, eating cheeseburger, 50 pounds overweight, smoking cigarettes, never exercising, fighting with spot. That's who these bloods are drawn from. And because cardiologists don't talk to people about their diet and lifestyle, if you let them continue to eat their cheeseburgers and hot dogs and whatever, if they continue that diet, yep, this is what happens. And those predictive values are right. They do have significantly increased chance. But once you adopt a whole food plant-based diet, you stop running all of those fiery toxins through your bloodstream, meal after meal after meal. As the weeks go by and the months go by, and those inflammatory molecules leave your tissues, the body heals, the inflammation leaves the artery walls, the lining reestablishes itself. I'll show you that in a minute. You become a different creature. You take yourself out of that risk pool. These numbers don't apply to you. And I get these 92-pound vegan marathon running women. Oh, my LDL, my cholesterol was 201. Should I go on statins? This woman couldn't clog an artery if she wanted to. That disease process is not happening in her body, and to worry herself over this is absolutely not necessary. Well, put you on statins. Why? Well, they keep it from making cholesterol. That's right, they do. This is cholesterol up here. Wonderful, beautiful molecule with these lovely rings here. Very versatile molecule. It is the rootstock from which your body does some nifty chemistry, and it puts a little side group on here and changes the side group and turns it into progesterone, which your adrenal glands will take and turn into corticosterone and aldosterone and cortisol. Whoa, all from cholesterol. Very impressive. Way to go, adrenals. If you have ovaries, they will take that same cholesterol molecule and put it through pregnenolone and deoxycortisol and turn it into estrone. And estradiol turn into estrogens for you. Whoa, from cholesterol. Whoa, man, not bad chemistry there. And if you're a guy, your testicles will take the pregnenolone and turn that into androstenedione, which turn that into testosterone. All from cholesterol. Cholesterol is not an evil molecule. That's why your liver makes it. And to focus on how high your cholesterol, oh, it's elevated, what statins are, they're the enzyme that makes cholesterol, hydroxyethylglutarone-covalent reductase, is the one that closes this ring here. And without that enzyme closing that ring, you don't have cholesterol, okay? And that's what statins do. They poison that enzyme that lets you make cholesterol. We want to lower your cholesterol, well, that's one way to do it. But in the body, you can't do one thing. oh, we're just stopping your cholesterol production. Are you kidding? When I first read what this drug really does, was I surprised when later, oh, the liver gets inflamed, enzymes go up, muscles start hurting, brain fog. No, I'm not surprised at all. And why would you put people on this potent drug to poison, and it poisons the enzymes of what it does? Why would you put someone to stop the production of this? Because there's cholesterol in plaques. But how are they treating their arteries? It's not a matter of how high their cholesterol is. If I've got a lean, healthy, vegan person, not smoking, happy, normal weight, etc., and their cholesterol is 208, then I have to trust their liver. Their liver knows what it's doing, and on that morning when their needle is in their vein, their liver needed to keep 208 milligrams of cholesterol in their bloodstream so her adrenals could get on with their steroid synthesis, and her ovaries could get on with their estrogen synthesis. It's not a disease. She's not going to have a stroke. I'm not going to put this woman on statins. There's normal physiology. But we're so frightened by these numbers. The cardiologists are so scared of getting sued that your cholesterol's over 200, you got to go statins. I don't care who the owner of the arteries are. I would say, doctors, stop. Look at the owner of the arteries. And this woman really going to be building up plaque in her arteries. Does she really have that disease? She doesn't. Draw the inflammatory panel on her, get her carotids on. If they're clean, stop worrying this woman. Trust her liver knows how much cholesterol to keep in her bloodstream. It's not going to turn into atherosclerotic plaque because she's not injuring her arteries with everything your Joe Sixpack patients out in the waiting room are doing on a daily basis. This is reversible. So here's how the reversal process happens. Here we are back in the artery walls. Here's that nasty oxidized cholesterol. Those are the artery wall, pulls into foam cells. Nasty free radical damage is happening here. But you, are a seeker of truth as you are, ran across Dr. Esselson's book, saw his lecture, came to talk like this, and especially if you've got bad artery disease, you're following his advice, especially to run pounds of dark green leafy vegetables and yellow vegetables through your bloodstream day after day after day. Why? It becomes a bit of a joke, but it's no joke. Here's why you want to do this. And here's why he gets the success. Because here we are in the artery walls, but if day after day, salad after steamed veggies, after kale soup, after lentil stew, after more kale, after more broccoli, you're just keeping your blood thick, rich, with all these phytonutrients. These phytonutrients, the polyphenols and the phenolics and the resveratrol and the L-sulfide, these are antioxidants. They neutralize free radicals. They quench free radicals. So meal after meal, as you're keeping these antioxidants going through your bloodstream, day after day, week after week, month after month, you're eating this stuff. Those molecules start seeping into the walls of the arteries. They encounter the free radicals and they neutralize them. And so you don't have the free radicals or the oxidized cholesterol in the artery wall. And as a result, these bad old macrophages here know they're not needed, so they leave and they outmigrate and they go. And the plaques become smaller and smaller and smaller. And the endothelial lining reestablishes itself, not by magic, but because your bone marrow is constantly putting out showers of stem cells that reupholster the artery walls like paving stones, and turn your arteries back into basically healthy arteries again. So if I've got some poor vegan guy or woman who got her HDL is two smidges too low and her LDL is 2 notches too high, relax, doesn't matter. This woman is taking care of her arteries. This guy is taking care of his arteries. He's not going to develop this disease. So don't you be Jane Sixpack or Joe Sixpack. Get yourself lean to and free yourself out from the tyranny of the numbers. Stop getting your cholesterol checked. It doesn't matter. If you want to get these markers checked once or twice, fine. And if they're stone cold normal, enough. You're just not going to develop that disease. You're more likely to get hit by a bus at 105 by not looking both ways before you cross the street. You'll get a stroke. And so you wind up with these big, lovely pictures that Esselstyn shows us about the arteries opening up. Why is it so dramatic? In case you don't know, it's due to Poiseuille's law, and that says that as it gets wider, the increase of flow through that pipe goes up, not by the increase of the radius, but by the fourth power of the increase of the radius. So if the artery goes up by a factor of, increases by a radius by a factor of 2, the flow of liquid, like blood, goes up not by a factor of 2, but by a factor of 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 by a factor of 16. And you know that if you're trying to suck the liquid up through a skinny straw, a straw even twice as wide gives you a whole lot more liquid. That's Poiseuille's law. Well, that's why if you can open these arteries up just a little bit, you get this big increase in blood flow. And that classic case report that Fraelis did about this poor fella with severe angina and had to stop every 10 yards, started a vegan diet, and within 6 months he's climbing a mountain because of that plaque melts away and the artery flow opens up. And this guy's going to get lucky tonight for that very same reason. More power to you, fella. If you've got anybody with clogged arteries, please get a Dr. Esselstyn's book, then read it, and follow it to the letter. It's coming down to this. This man told us 2,500 years ago. He was right on a level he couldn't have imagined, on a molecular level. And as my patients are sitting in front of me in my office, overweight and hypertension, diabetic, why, doc, am I all messed up? It's the food. It's been the food all along. So, real hopeful trends, people are understanding that how we eat and live our lives has a huge effect upon our health. So, let me drag you into the 21st century. I didn't drag you guys, you're the rentals, open the door for you. I had to drag my medical colleagues into this because they all learned in medical school, like I did, in the Pleistocene age, that nutrition is simple. You just need some sugars for energy, some protein for structure and enzymes, and some fats to get through the next famine. Have some of each group every day, you'll be fine. And this is what we all learned as nutrition. And that's still what they're being taught. This is outrageously incomplete. The truth is, as I said earlier in the week, our food's chemically alive. And our digestive system is so efficient that within minutes of eating anything that you chew up in your mouth, within minutes, molecules of that food are flowing through every cell in your body. And in those cells, your DNA lies unfolded. And the nutrients or anti-nutrients in that mouthful of food, whether it's a kale or a Big Mac, washes through your cells, and those molecules play your DNA like a piano. And they turn genes on, they turn genes off. They turn enzymes on, they turn enzymes off. Food brings in not only nutrition, it brings in information. It changes us on a genetic level. The science is called nutrigenomics. It's how our food changes us. And we have to realize that it's a most powerful force of all when it comes to determining health. The molecules in those food changes directly by turning genes on and off, or indirectly by changing the microbes in our intestinal tract, and they in turn change our membrane permeability and our neurochemistry. But there's no question our food is the most powerful shaper of our status of health. And it comes down to this: you don't need to be a geneticist to understand that the genes are going to be turned on by this fuel mixture, and the protein enzymes they create are going to be much different than the proteins and enzymes created by this fuel mixture. That gives the chemical message to your tissues of calm down. Your genes may load the gun, but your diet and lifestyle pull the trigger. The food stream runs through your tissues like a river, turning genes on and off in every cell. What's the quality of that river? That river is filled with this, meal after meal, bacon and eggs and burgers and steaks and fried chicken, all that stuff. Then it's like a polluted river as you're running through your tissues. And that leads to the cartoon by Baxter Montgomery, a cardiology friend in Houston. It says, from the tree trunk of bad nutrition comes all these evil fruits, the diabetes, the high blood pressure, the arthritis, the heart failure, etc., etc. And if you want an understanding of Western medicine in the 21st century, you need only look back to that ancient fable of the blind man and the elephant. This blind man come upon an elephant, one grabs its leg, the elephant is like a tree trunk, one grabs its tail, the elephant's like a rope, one grabs the trunk, the elephant's like a snake, One grabs the ear, the elbows like the fan. They all have hold of the same elephant. None of them have the slightest clue what an entire elephant really is. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the state of your medical specialist. What my colleagues have yet to understand, and what Dr. Campbell and Dr. Weiss and Dr. Kahn and myself, Dr. Bear, all of us are trying to get our colleagues to awaken to, is that the Western diet that I've showed you in numerous iterations here, that Ken eats on a regular basis, fast foods, burgers, all that stuff, bubbles up through every tissue in our body and causes molecular imbalance, injury, disruption in basically all our cells. But depending on your genetics will determine which of your tissues gets disrupted first, and that's going to determine which specialist office you find yourself sitting and waiting in. But what I'm telling you is that this toxic brood that Americans and everybody in the West is putting through their tissues causes disruptions in all the tissues in the body. But the cardiologist will see the clogged arteries and the angina. The internist will see the hypertension. The endocrinologist will see the type 2 diabetes. The rheumatologist will see inflammatory joint disease. The dermatologist is going to see the psoriasis and the inflammatory eczema. The gastroenterologist will see the colitis and Crohn's disease. The psychiatrist will see the depression and bipolar disorders. They're all looking at the same disease. It's what their patients are eating. They're all looking at the same disease, the effects of their patient's toxic diet. But this, I'm not a Harry Potter fan, but I'm told that in the movies there, the Archville and Baltimore, it's the name that must not be spoken, And somehow the patient's diet, and can't talk about that. They'll never change their diet, can't talk about the diet, never been any studies, don't talk about the diet. Well, like the kids, like teenagers down in that Florida shooting school, we call BS on this. You can't say anymore that we don't know the effect of food. That cannot be allowed to stand. People are dying on operating tables today because knowledge that could have kept them off that table was withheld from them. And there's going to be lawsuits from angry widows. My husband died on that operating table, and nobody told us that you could melt those plaques away with a plant-based diet. When did you people know this? Why didn't somebody tell us this before we signed up for this operation? Now I've got 2 teenage kids to raise by myself. Why didn't the cardiologist say anything about this? That's going to get their attention. And I'm going to talk to Dr. Barnard and the lawyers at PCRM about getting some legal wheels turning here, because it's unfortunately going to take that to wake my colleagues up. I'm afraid that they're afraid of. That suddenly nutrition will come into focus for them. But we need to do it. I want to talk to the medical students. I'm going to the medical schools. PCRM is sending me around to various medical schools, going to the University of Michigan, Wayne State University, UC Davis, and to the nutritionally awakened students there, and talk to them about what you learned this week. Congestive heart failure, let's hold up the lens of nutrition. Here's why that heart really failed. Here's what the Western diet does to mitochondrial function, et cetera, et cetera. And then do this online via webinars. Go to the medical associations and talk to the doctors who are starting to wake up to this. Because we're going to start, because we've got to have the public aware and pulling the doctors along. They're not going to do it themselves. So there's going to be billboards. Does your doctor know about plant-based nutrition? Does your doctor talk about reversing your disease with plant-based nutrition? We got to embarrass them and explain that. Whatever it takes is what we're going to do here. And all I want to focus on educating the young med students, because as the old sclerotic layer of cardiologists and internists with the crossed arms, and they shuffle off stage right. I want to talk to the younger docs coming up, because they're the ones who are open to this, because they know the truth of it, and they're a lot more tuned in than their sclerotic forebears here. So, it's the food, it's been the food all along. The body is not capricious, diseases don't just happen. At age 20, you have the face that nature gave you. At age 50, you have the face your choices gave you. And the way your choices give you this face is by what I told, what genes it's to what this candy bar is really turning on in your tissues and how it ages you and oxidizes you and turns on the fast aging genes like TRC1, where the kale and the beans and the greens turn off the fast aging genes. So the food really makes a difference. We gotta stop pretending. Why don't most doctors recognize nutrition is important? We're not taught anything about it. We do not respect it as a science, and ironically, it's the most powerful therapeutic science of all. And the doctors are eating it themselves. They're eating chicken and cheese and filet mignon. They're not going to tell their patients not to eat it. But I'll tell you, if I'm seeing a doctor and he walks in the door with a pot belly and he's taking statins and lisinopril, I get up and walk out. That man has nothing to teach me about products. And these physicians are an embarrassment to themselves and to the profession. It's a disease that they are promoting by their very being, and it's not serving their patients. It's something the same. Most underappreciated, potent, and underused therapy in all of medicine is food. When you start a plant-based diet, the body changes. Your colon bacteria change within days to a more healthful one. The bad bacteria that generates the carcinogens, they give way to the Prevotella bacteria that stabilize the colon wall, decrease cancer propensity. The good guys, they show up, and the bad guys start disappearing, and the microbes in our gut, in turn, influence our moods, our cravings, a lot of what's going on inside our head. And an apple a day really does keep the doctor away. It's endotoxin, less toxin. So, instead of pouring this through your bloodstream every day, and the doctors have to understand the power of this and the conscious choice. If you're, listen, doc, I'm in a hurry, I'm a fast food guy, okay, but have no illusions about what you are doing to your tissues. And when you get the skin eruption, and you get the sore joints, and you get the loose stools, and you get the headaches, you get the brain fog, you can't play. Do I have Lyme disease, doc? Before you start doing all these bloody tests, what are you really eating? What are you doing to your microbiome and your brain chemistry from the food that you are putting down your gullet? Why don't you have food that cleans you out on the inside? And if you do so, day after day, week after week, month after month, people heal. And like I said earlier in the week, the water in this river is the water in the fruits and vegetables that you want pouring through your cells, meal after meal after meal. This is what heals us. And what we see is just stunning. Diseases I was taught either never go away or take years to go away. Within days to weeks, the obesity starts to melt away, and the arteries open up, and high blood pressure comes down, and the joints stop hurting, and the skin clears up, and the asthmatic lungs stop wheezing, and the migraine headaches go away, and the postnasal drip stops, and they turn back into normal, healthy people who don't need the services of people like me, which is fine with me. I'd rather be out on the right path. He was right on a level, and I don't want to brush over this. This is the power of what we're talking about. If you've got a pot belly, if you're hurt from fibro whatever or something itis, whatever it is, if you got medical stuff happening, if you're taking pills on a regular basis, you open up your medicine cabinet and there's a bunch of pills there, stop. I'm not saying, it's not to make people feel guilty or whatever, but there's a good chance what you're eating is playing the major role in whatever you're suffering from. And just take 90 days, run a whole food plant-based diet through that body for 90 days and watch it turn into that body and watch these things go away. You owe it to yourself, to your body, to your family, to your bank account, every level. Really give it up. As they say in New Zealand, boots in and try, man. Really strap it on and do it for a good 90 days. And let food be your medicine and see what happens. We do this at True North. We use a whole food plant-based diet, and Ken turns into him. And obesity should not be accepted. It's not a joke, and it's nothing to be coddled. It's a state of inflammation. The subcutaneous fat produces estrogens that set people up for all sorts of cancers. The internal fat sets off makes cytokines that sets off inflammation. Obesity is not to be accepted. But the beauty of is a whole food plant-based diet is the definitive treatment for obesity. You can't hold weight on soups and salads and steamed veggies. You wind up getting lean on this stuff. But you can't be eating the oil and the flour products and the vegan junk food. But keep your belly full of whole plant foods, take a walk every day, and you wind up lean. The obesity thing fades in the rearview mirror. Well, things that give me hope are my colleagues that make me feel a whole lot less alone in this endeavor here. And all the lady dietitians and everybody else there. So here's some things to give you hope. Enough of the science stuff. If you don't know about the Plant Nutrition Project, these are plant-based docs that every year have a meeting. This year it's in San Diego. I'll be speaking there. Dr. Greger will be there. This is the 5th International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference, and people come from around the world, from Ireland and England and India and Australia and UK. Dr. Mackay is here from Australia. I first met him. All these wonderful people show up and share their ideas on plant-based nutrition. But the fact that it's happening and it's growing, the first year there was 200 doctors, then 400, then 600. Last year there were 800, and I'm sure they'll break 1,000 this year. The life is going on around the world. If you want some solid data to base your adjudicating on, go to nutritionresearch.org. Michaela Carlson just done a great job at getting really solid research together. Here's another conference, the PPOD conference, Plant-Based Prevention of Disease. I'll be speaking that in Raleigh, North Carolina in May. The fact that this is happening, I mean, look, behold, international conferences on plant-based nutrition in healthcare being held across the country. Lordy, I think I died and went to heaven. I can't believe that I'm finally seeing this. But the fact that this is happening is a great sign for all of us and for medicine. They say you can't keep a hat pin in a cloth bag for very long. You know, the point comes out, and these are all points that are bringing the truth of it out. Here's our rodeo in East Pennsylvania, pairing with St. Luke's Hospital and providing organic produce in the hospital. You walk into Henry Ford in West Bloomfield, and you go through their greenhouse, and in the lobby they have a teaching kitchen on how to make plant-based meals, and they want their patients to be healthy. And wherever your local hospital is, go demand this. Go, what are they really serving in dietary? What comes up on the trays? And when are you going to teach your clients, your patients about healthy eating? Here's Fletcher Allen in Vermont, same thing, University of Vermont hospitals. One of the best things that gives me hope is Michael Greger at nutritionfacts.org. And if you're not familiar with this, I urge you. And it's such a great reference. You click on nutrition videos, that's the alphabet appears down here. You click on B for BGH or for I for insulin, and all these lovely videos come up with those topics. That's a brilliant resource. I'm going to be spending a fair amount of time talking to folks in Kaiser. In 2013, they came out with a big pronouncement that plant-based nutrition is where it's at, because they're right. And they know that if even 1/10 of their clients adopt whole food plant-based diets, the billions of dollars they're going to save in scans not done, in chests not opened, in ICU beds not occupied, they are going to make gazillions of dollars here. And so it was a brilliant thing to do, not out of altruism, but financially. The doctors in the hospitals, they're going to be doing less procedures. They're not going to like this. But the insurance companies are going to like plant-based nutrition a lot because they're going to save a lot of money. But they made this pronouncement in 2013, but you go into a Kaiser facility, primary care clinic, and they're not going to talk about plant-based nutrition. It hasn't filtered down to the first line. So I'm going to be meeting with Kaiser's folks and get this filtered down. So when you do go see the primary care doctor about your chest cold or your bladder infection, so before you leave, go see Ms. Smith, and the plant-based dietitian in room 4. She's got some important things to go over with you. And to make sure that gets plugged into their system, we start making a difference. Power of fasting gives me hope. We've seen some remarkable things. We've seen a lymphoma melt away under a water fast. A mass of lymph nodes in her groin went from this to that in 6 weeks. And in her right groin, this lymph node turned into that lymph node. But the key, of course, is what you eat after the fast, not to focus on the fast. I like this one, insurance discounts for vegans. Reasons why vegans should lower rate. Absolutely they should. Go to Health IQ, check this out. I don't know much about it at all, but the fact that this is happening, this is a hopeful trend. This is giving me hope, because there should be lots of ways to make money off of this for enterprising folks. We know how to nourish ourselves on plants. That's important information. Yeah, there's lots of ways to make money out of it. It's having an effect, apparently. Our meat consumption seems to be finally falling. And some other things that give me hope. Beyond meat products, there's an institute. If you're looking for an investment opportunity, check out the Good Food Institute. And they invest in things to replace meat on any level. And they're promoting, I have no connection with these companies, or they did. But there's Beyond Burgers that's juicy and red when you bite into it. Here's their beefy crumbles that they put in the spaghetti sauce and they put into the tacos. Here's their Beyond Chicken. Whatever it takes for Joe Sixpack to eat this instead of the real flesh, I'm all for it. Yeah, it's full of salt, full of oil, I know. But as a transition food, if it gets Joe Sixpack, gets all that dead flesh out of his system, this is fine with me for a few months or a year. Here's their Beyond Meat, there's chili style, etc. And to finish the controversial, slightly gross subject, we have to talk about Memphis meats and this meatball. Because this meatball never saw the inside of cow or slaughterhouse. This was grown in a petri dish, and they are now, Memphis Meats is actively setting up their bioreactors to generate animal muscle to be formed into, it's grown from real cow and pig cells. Takes 14 to 21 days to mature in the bioreactor. And right now, a pound will cost $18,000, but no question that cost is going to come down. And if Joe Sixpack would like to eat one of these a couple times a week, fine with me, as long as I said, the cows don't care why you don't eat them. And same thing here. Here's their lab-grown chicken. 12th and 21st century. If it stops the animal slaughter, I'm all for it. And to get off the dairy train, I urge you to, if you want, check out the plant-based milks and cheeses and ice creams. They're all crap. They're all sugar and vegetable oil. And again, no one's saying that this is healthy food, but at least they don't have the hormones and leukemia viruses. They don't sponsor that dreadful dairy industry. These are treat foods. These are not drinking beverages. This is, you don't drink it. 2 quarts of soy milk. This is for a little splash on your cereal. This is a little quarter cup of your tea. But these are novelty foods. You have a little bit, just to tease your taste. These are not health foods. And more power to Bioko and her amazing cheeses as well. But you don't want to be this guy, even with healthy foods. You don't want to sit in front of the TV with a 5-pound bag of cashews and shovel them in. It's healthy. It's not healthy. It's not healthy. It's never healthy. Things give me hope. Telemedicine. I make my living these days doing telemedicine consultations. If you'd like to do a consultation with me, go to my website, drklaper.com, click on contacts. You can do a consultation with me. And that's now extrapolated out to robotic surgery. So now a surgeon in Boston can operate on someone in Nairobi by manipulating the robot arm. So we're at an amazing time we're living in. As an old anesthetist, this is just stunning for you to be able to see this. And now, of course, we're starting to actually grow body parts. But nothing is ever going to be as good as your original equipment. Take care of what nature gave you. And one of the best things that gives me the most hope of all is Neil Barnard and his wonderful work with the PCRF to stop animal training, animal medical training, and animal testing. When I saw the University of Illinois finally stopped doing dog labs, I said, thank you, Neil. Yeah, I have the worst memories of that. And when he announced that program, we're going to stop all dog labs and all animal testing in med schools. Right, yeah, 1986. Son of a gun, he did it. And when the U of I finally joined the good side, I stood up and I gave Neil an applaud in my office there. And finally, young people give me hope. We gotta save the world. We are destroying it with our lust for flesh. The industrial production of animal flesh is the driving force behind every single environmental destructive force we face. That's why they're cutting down the forests. That's where the soil's eroding off corn and soybean fields for cheeseburgers. Most water goes to flesh production. Most water is polluted by manure and pesticides. Most pesticides are sprayed on animal fodder. Most species are being driven to extinction due to us taking their land for animal flesh production. And most of the greenhouse gases, the carbon dioxide and methane and nitrous oxides are coming from the animals, 70 billion of them a year. And I showed these slides before, but we owe it to the kids as well as to the polar bears. It's not right what we've done. We are strip mining the ocean. Be done with the fish already. Well, they're not fish, and healthy. They are so loaded with mercury and pesticides. We have so fouled the nest by treating the oceans like sewers that what few fish are left, you don't want to eat them. And let them swim. We are strip mining the ocean. We are clear cutting it with these miles long nests that scoop up every whale and dolphin and sea turtle and shark. It's not really enough already. Let the oceans recover. Time to let the fish off the hook. Lots to read about this, John Robbins' book, United Nations, but I urge you to educate yourself. Go to Richard Oppenlander's website, Comfortably Unaware. Please see the videos there and read his book, Comfortably Unaware. It's right where the meat and dairy industry wants you. And we can't afford to stay there. So, just takes one person to make the change and change their community. And the lights are going on all over. Here's Ted Barnett. He's a radiologist in Rochester, New York. They've done Rochester lifestyle medicine. They give plant-based cooking courses, show videos, etc. I've Skyped in a couple times for them. Here's Dr. Mike Nelson. He's a dentist in Redding, California. Very active in the POD program. This one dentist can start doing the potlucks and the videos, and everybody can do something. And it's international. Here's Dr. Malcolm Mackay. He's here on the cruise with us, and he's a GP in Melbourne, Australia. He does Whole Foods Plant-Based Health in Australia. And there's also veganaustralia.org, a very vibrant organization. These are diabetes educators in Australia. There's Clint Patterson, another Sydney fellow from Cures on Rheumatoid Arthritis. Doctors should be role models for their patients. I agree. And 63% of medical schools maintain a fast food franchise in one of their affiliated hospitals. If it does, patients are 4 times likely to purchase fast food meals while in the hospital and to view them as healthy. This must come to an end. We testified in Chicago a few weeks ago to have the AMA to put some muscle behind getting fast food off the menus in the hospital as well as out of the lobbies. Doctors want our patients to eat less meat. The fact that these are happening and they are showing up is wonderful signs. Medicare is paying for orders these days. Everybody can do something. Show a movie, show what the health, show folks super nice. Have a plant-based potluck, pass out literature, start a support group, go to a veg fest, take a cruise. These wonderful videos that are being done now, Force Over Knives was a game changer when it woke up. And Eating You Alive and What the Hell, and Plant Pure Nation, following suit, the more the better, and Game Changers is from heaven. That's going to be a real game changer. Thank you, too. Right? You guys need to see that again. So what gives me hope? Lila gives me hope. She's a 15-year-old girl in Los Angeles, and she noted much to her dismay that on the cafeteria line of the LA school system, there's nothing for vegan girls to eat. It's all meat and dairy. And so she petitioned the LA school board, and I got some folks down there to help her testify. There's a cardiologist in the LA area. There's Pamela Anderson, the TV star. There's Tori Washington, the vegan muscle builder. And we all went up and testified for the LA school board. And we sat there like this, not quite sure what to make of it. But the senior man, the oldest man on the board said, you know, I grew up eating this meat and dairy stuff. I don't think it did me much good. You know, I think you folks have a good idea there. And what we need to do is make meat eating as uncool as smoking and wearing clothes. And that's exactly what happened. And the LA school board said, you know, she's right. And they wound up putting vegan options on the cafeteria line at the LA school board. What if there's a group of medical students sitting around and one pulled out a pack of Marlboros and lit up? What reaction would he get or she get from her fellow medical students? Man, you still doing that? You still doing that? Nobody smokes around here anymore. You still doing that? We got to do this with meat eating. When somebody orders a steak, you still eating that stuff, man? That's so gross. And we can do it. John Stuart Mill, and we have seen this again and again, back in the 19th century, it often happens that the universal belief of one age, a belief from which no one was free, or could be free without an extraordinary effort of genius or courage, becomes to a subsequent age so palpable in absurdity that the only difficulty is to imagine how such an idea could ever have appeared credible. The fact that we're going to be saying we used to kill 1 million chickens an hour. You're kidding. That is absurd. How could we ever done? Most of the land on Earth was devoted to making animal flesh and raising and slaughtering it. You're kidding. Animal flesh growing and eating is going to turn into one of these that Dr. Mill described. We've got to make it as uncool as smoking or wearing fur. Everything will heal, the planet will heal, the people will heal, the rivers will heal, life will get better on every level. To my colleagues, I'll say the nutrition revolution has begun in medicine. Join it and help your patients really heal. We have seen powerful changes happen. When I grew up, the Berlin Wall, man, that was going to be there forever. It was the scariest monument to brute force ever. Nothing's going to take that down. But 20 years of trade with the West and blue jeans and Beatles music, and one day in 1989, that wall came down. And we can do this with meat eating. We will live to see the last slaughterhouse closed. We will live to see a time. That we look at these slaughterhouse operations like we look at whaling. The mighty New England whaler, I'm a harpooner, I kill them whales. My God, man, what are you talking about? Whales are precious. We're going to do the same thing that's going to happen to the meat industry and the dairy industry as well. The most hopeful trend in healing, as far as I'm concerned, is you. You're here. You're open to this message. You know that change is required. And you know that you're the agents of change. I urge you to make the change. If you're already vegan and you've been vegan for 20 years, you know all this stuff. You can give this lecture next time yourself. But if you're not, realize that, for whom the bell tolls, the bell is clanging. It's clanging for you and your arteries and your prostate, the rest tissue, all that stuff. But it's clanging for your kid. It's clanging for your grandchildren. Every time you're in the restaurant and you look at the wait person, you say, I'll have beef, I'll have chicken, I'll have lamb, I'll have veal. Your kid's world gets a little dead. Your grandchild's world gets a little hot, a little dry. And we all lose. You gotta stop pretending this animal flesh comes from divine. It comes from your children's future. It comes from our grandkids' lives. And it's not right for us to take it from program, which what every fresh meal is a theft. This way, every rocket, every bomb is a theft, like Eisenhower said. Every meat meal is a theft from our children and from life itself. It's time for us to affirm life. We have no right to inflict death on the industrial scale that we are doing it on a second-by-second basis. There are the hundreds of thousands of cows, pigs, and chickens that have died during my talk here. What right do we have to do that to these other creatures? At this point, knowing what we know, we need to stop being agents of death and start becoming agents of life for your own sake, for your own arteries, and your own freedom from disease. But as a statement of who we are as human beings on this planet, as people with loving hearts, who people, I saw that lovely t-shirt that Dr. Weiss had, eat like you give a damn. You know, it's time for us to really live our lives like we give a damn. And if we do, it's going to start turning things around. All this abuse of the planet and ourselves, something we used to do, you know, back in the bad old days there. And it'll be the young kids, and it'll be the gray hairs who set the example, hand in hand. Let's all go into a hopeful and healthier, better world. So eat plants, love a lot, and things have to get better. I'll be with you. Good job.
Let's hear it for Dr. Klaper. He is certainly passionate. He has agreed to a Q&A, so it's really here today.
He's going to answer a few questions. And a quick reminder, please check out his DVDs in the bookstore, and you can get recordings of the talks that he's given this week. Okay, first question right here.
One more question about statins. My doctor, as I said before, said I should keep on taking statins even though I reduced my LDL to 70. And she said that it was because of some reason I would need, there would cause some inflammation or some problem that has nothing to do with the number, but something else. Is that true? Do statins actually reduce inflammation?
Yes, statins, she's asking about the anti-inflammatory properties of statins, and they do. They have a bit of an anti-inflammatory property. They inhibit some of the molecular reactions required in inflammation. But what is driving inflammation? What's driving inflammation is the sugar and the meat and the dairy and the oils and all that stuff. If you take that inflammatory drive away, then you don't need the statins to suppress an inflammation that isn't there. You know, these cells want to deal with the cause.
Can I reverse my Parkinson's?
Can you reverse Parkinson's? As far as, I don't want to build up false hopes with the word reversal, however, at True North Health Center where I work, Dr. Peter Sultana, who's an MD colleague of mine, has been working for years with amino acid therapy, and he gives people amino acids orally, and the body turns them into neurotransmitters, and he's got some stunning results. And I urge you to contact True North Health Center in Santa Rosa, California, and do a phone consultation with Dr. Peter Sultana, and work with him with his amino acids and see if he does, and you get some good results of that. Okay? Okay.
Hello, I take vitamin B12, and I'd like to know exactly how much should I be taking?
1,000 micrograms of methylcobalamin twice a week should be
Just
easily
twice a week.
meet everybody's need. You don't need to take it every day. Don't take it every day.
What is the best way to find a plant-based doctor where I live?
There's a couple of ways. Go to plantbaseddocs.org. Go to the best way. It depends on the doctor, because the best thing, of course, is to make your own doctor plant-based and to tune him in to Dr. Greger's website. And I'm going to be, one reason I left True North is I need to make a short 3-module course for doctors so the patients can give it to them and just watch this video and read this handout and you'll know what to do, doc. And so all doctors become plant-based. But at this point, go to plantbaseddocs.com and see if you can rustle up there. Okay.
Thank you for taking my question. The question is there data or studies that have shown any correlation between the average consumption of Tylenol and the production of LDL?
Tylenol and LDL. Not that I'm familiar with, but Tylenol clearly has an effect on the liver, and that's where LDL is made. And so if I read a study showing that that there's a definite adverse correlation, I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm not familiar with it per se.
Is it possible to get off of proton pump inhibitors if you've been on for 27 years and have an eroded esophagus? Where can you get help? True North?
Absolutely. Can you, there's a question about why that esophagus is eroded and what's really been put down that esophagus that has you so angry and upset. If one goes on a whole food plant-based diet, and especially during the early stages, all the foods that go down are very soothing, blended squash and sweet potatoes and rice gruels and things are very soothing to the lining of the esophagus. The inflammation will settle down there. You want to trim down to a normal weight so you don't have belly fat pushing up underneath your stomach when you sit down, because that distorts the valve and allows the acid to reflux. And finally, you want to switch from a PPI, which turns the acid off for 24 hours. You want to switch to a H2 blocker like Zantac or ranitidine or famotidine and take it in the evening so you turn off your nighttime acid. During the day, when you're up in vertical, you want your acid back, and the acid will go down the intestinal tract. It's when you want, but most people reflux at night when they lay down. So if you turn off your nighttime stomach acid with an evening ranitidine, that can help you get off the PPI. This is all in my video out there called Digestion Made Easy. You can watch it on my website as well, go to drclaper.com. Go to the go to where it says webinars and do look at Digestion Made Easy. I've got it all there. Okay.
Thank you for the great presentation so far. My question is, does type 1 diabetes benefit as much as type 2 diabetes from plant-based diet?
No, type 1 diabetes is an actual deficit of pancreas cells that make insulin. And it depends how much insulin your pancreas is still making. If it's just making zero insulin, well, then you need to wait till they're getting really close. Within the next 3 years, they will have implantable pancreas put under your skin there, and it functions as a functional pancreas. So they're getting really close to that. But many people have type 1.5 diabetes. The pancreas still makes a little insulin, and so if that's the case, then you want to make sure it might be enough insulin for your particular body. In other words, get yourself really trim so you don't have a lot of fat soaking up insulin. Get yourself physically active so your muscles burn sugar every day. And you may find out that if your pancreas only puts out 2 or 3 units of insulin a day, it might be enough for you. So there's things to work with, but by and large, they're 2 different diseases. Type 2 diabetes almost always cures completely on a plant-based diet over time. It takes a year, but it gets there.
Okay, my question is, can I fast if I have low blood pressure? Normally my pressure is 100/70.
Right, I don't know.
And it drops when I start fasting. It drops really significantly.
Yeah, there's an art to supervising a fast. Over the 8 years I was at True North, I supervised about almost 2,000 fasts. And she has a legitimate concern. Blood pressures go down on a fast. And that's usually a wonderful thing because people who are fasting have high blood pressure. And it's nice to see that pressure come down. But if you have someone who's already got low blood pressure, she's at risk for dropping excessively low. She stands up and gravity drains blood down to her legs there, where she could feel lightheaded or pass out. So one question, and I'm not going to take this much further, is ask her, then why are you really doing the fast? You don't want to, if it's just a light clean out and just want a little detox, then 72 hours, 3 days, 5 days, that's enough. You don't need to do a 21-day fast or a 30-day fast. That just puts that lean body through excessive amounts of stress. But intermittent fasting, to do a 3-day fast once a month or a 5-day fast once a month, really does wonderful things for the body without putting you at excess stress. So if you're basically healthy, I would look into intermittent fasting and hold it to 5 days at the most unsupervised. Okay? And, shouldn't have a problem with blood pressure with that. So,
If you have a good diet and exercise regularly, how much alcohol, coffee, and marijuana can you safely consume?
anyway, let's go on that one. Alcohol, I think the safe number is 0. I can test that molecule, and I think it's a toxin to every organ in the body, and I heard that nobody drinks alcohol. It kills everything it touches. Coffee, God bless coffee, got me through many night in the emergency room. I haven't seen any studies that a cup a day in the morning gets you started causes any great harm. I'll leave it at that. And marijuana, I have no data one way or the other on that.
Doctor, I have the gout, and as you know, I can't eat beans, peanuts. What do you recommend? What do you recommend for that?
Gout is a painful situation where a substance called uric acid builds up in joints, kidneys, other places. And he was told, I can't eat peanuts, can't eat beans. Well, there's art to nutritional counseling, and I would never tell someone with gout you can't eat beans. Everybody can get rid of uric acid. You got to find a level for him, and at the risk of bringing up bad dreams or bad memories from high school chemistry. The crystals of gout will only precipitate out if the concentration gets too high, if it's not drinking enough water. But if this man ate a couple of tablespoons of beans and had plenty of water at that meal, the odds of him having a gout attack are 0. That's just not going to happen. And as long as he keeps himself well hydrated and he's moderate in the intake of these substances, he should do fine. It also depends what else he's eating with the beans. And if he's eating a bunch of kale and high fiber foods, quinoa, etc., that slow down the absorption, you're not going to have that much uric acid in the blood. So there's a lot of other factors. And he's a good example, and I appreciate his volunteering here. Not to box yourself into with these nutritional labels. We're biological creatures. We're used to foraging anything around us. And small amounts of non-harmful things are okay, and don't restrict yourself unnecessarily. Stay a biological creature. Good.
We have time for one more question.
Okay.
Dr. Klaper, thank you. My dad was a success story as far as Dr. Assassin died for heart disease. But he became allergic to eating, or I guess he can't eat beans. He started using Beano to help with the digestion of it. Then he became in extreme pain. I heard you mention to do a fast with water for 5 days. He's also terrified of that he lost so much weight because he feels like he's too skinny, so he had started back on meat products, which, to my dismay. But would you give a suggestion? Do you think the 5-day fast would work for him?
Well, no one needs to eat beans ever. And if he doesn't like eating beans, he'll eat beans. There's lots of other lentils, chickpeas, green peas.
He's been eating lentils and peas and stuff for life, and now those give him issues as well.
Well, are you just talking about gas? He gets gassy when he eats beans?
Extreme pain.
I would have to, it's hard to see what would cause extreme pain, as either inflammation or gaseous distension. And does he have bloody diarrhea? Does he have signs of colitis? So I don't think it's inflammation. I think he just generates a hellacious amount of gas and he gets distended and it's uncomfortable. And here's a guy who needs to start with 2 lentils and eat 2 lentils every night, and after a month make it 3 lentils, and after a month 4 lentils, and slowly build it up while his microbiome changes. But he's unnecessarily afraid. No one ever died of a bean overdose.
We're at time. Big round of applause for Dr. Klaper. Thank you so much.
Thank you.